It started with a Lexus, a silver one, parked at just the wrong angle, in just the wrong place, his driveway. At first, Marcus Lane didn't say a word. That wasn't his style. He was the kind of man who picked his battles carefully, who let the little things slide. A quiet war veteran turned high school art teacher, Marcus had seen enough chaos in his lifetime. What he wanted now was peace. His home was his sanctuary. A modest, two-bedroom house in a sleepy South Carolina suburb. Clean front lawn, freshly painted mailbox, a small porch where he liked to sit after class, sketching sunsets while sipping cheap bourbon from a chipped ceramic mug. But the peace didn't last. The first time it happened, he thought maybe it was a delivery mix-up. Or maybe a friend of a neighbor who didn't realize they were in someone else's spot. The silver Lexus RX was polished, tinted, and expensive-looking. Marcus raised an eyebrow but didn't bother to knock on any doors. He parked his Ford a little to the side and went inside. But then it happened again. And again. Always the same car. Always parked across his driveway, blocking the exact spot where he liked to park after a long day of teaching rowdy teens how to shade properly and stop using their erasers like weapons. That's when he met her. Cynthia Whitmore. She lived next door. Late 40s. Platinum blonde bob, designer sunglasses, high-waisted yoga pants that had never seen a treadmill. She was the self-proclaimed voice of the HOA, a title she wore like a crown. Cynthia didn't walk. She glided, phone in hand, latte in the other, like the entire block was her runway. Her home had manicured bushes shaped like swans and two little porcelain angels that guarded the walkway. Everything about her screamed control. When Marcus finally knocked on her door, she opened it like he was a solicitor trying to sell her something she already had. "Oh, you must be the art teacher," she said, flashing a tight, polite smile that didn't touch her eyes. "Yes, ma'am," Marcus replied. "I think you might have accidentally parked in my driveway again." Her laugh was small and breathy, like she was amused he even brought it up. "Oh, that? I was just dropping off something for my housekeeper. It's easier for me to swing into your side. You don't mind, do you?" Marcus paused. "I do, actually. It's been happening a lot." She gave him a look like he'd just told her the sky was blue. "I'm your neighbor, Marcus. Let's not be so territorial. We're all friends here." Then she closed the door. Marcus stood there for a second, unsure if he'd just been dismissed or gaslit. Probably both. That night, he didn't sleep well. Not because of the car, because of what the car represented: entitlement, disrespect. The assumption was that because he didn't cause a scene, he'd tolerate anything. But Marcus Lane wasn't passive. He was patient, and there's a difference. The next day, it happened again. No note, no warning, just Cynthia's Lexus, front bumper slightly over his walkway as if the concrete belonged to her. He knocked again. No answer. Waited 10 minutes. Still no response. He left a sticky note this time. "Please don't park here again. This is private property." It was gone by the time he came home from work. But her Lexus wasn't. It was parked deeper into his driveway now, closer to his garage, almost like a challenge. Marcus sat on his porch that evening, bourbon untouched, sketchpad closed. His sanctuary was shrinking, and in its place, a storm was building. Because if Cynthia Whitmore thought his silence was weakness, she had no idea what she had just started. Marcus tried to let it go. He really did. He told himself that maybe Cynthia had just forgotten, or maybe she was the kind of person who didn't understand boundaries because she never had to. Maybe if he ignored it long enough, she'd get bored and stop. But if Cynthia Whitmore was anything, she was persistent and entitled. The next week was a parade of disrespect, wrapped in faux innocence. The Lexus parked in his driveway 4 times in 7 days. Each time, a different excuse. "Oh, my handyman needed space to unload tools. My niece was visiting. Teenagers don't know where to park. We had a church group over. Sorry, it was packed." Always followed by that smile. The kind of smile that says, "What are you going to do about it?" Marcus stopped knocking. He started documenting. Photos, time-stamps, a small notebook tucked inside his kitchen drawer where he jotted down every instance, just in case. Then came the music. It was a Saturday morning. Marcus had planned to sleep in for once, maybe even take a drive out to the lake and get some sketching done in the quiet. But just after 7:30 a.m., the walls of his house started to vibrate. Not from thunder, from bass, thick, chest-thudding, window-rattling bass. the kind that felt like it was playing from inside his skull. He bolted upright and stumbled to the window. Cynthia's garage was open, and a Bluetooth speaker, the size of a toddler, was sitting on her driveway, blaring some kind of club remix. Her Lexus was, once again, sitting squarely in his driveway. A folding table had been set up with iced coffee pitchers and half-eaten pastries. A few women in workout gear were doing exaggerated lunges to the beat like it was some kind of HOA-sponsored Zumba class. Marcus blinked. Was this real life? He stepped outside, still in his slippers, and crossed the lawn. "Cynthia," he called out, waving his hand to get her attention. She turned, bright and perky, wearing neon pink leggings and a sports bra that read, "Wife, Mom, Boss." "Oh hey, Marcus. Isn't this fun?" He gestured toward his driveway. "You're parked in my spot again." "Oh," she said, barely glancing at the car. "I figured you wouldn't mind. It's the weekend." "And the music?" She tilted her head as if confused by the question. "We're doing a wellness boot camp. It's for mental health. I thought you'd be supportive." "I'd be more supportive if it wasn't shaking the bolts out of my walls." Her smile faltered, just for a second. Then it returned, wider than ever. "You should join us next time. Maybe you'd be less tense." She turned her back and resumed her lunges. Marcus stood there for a long moment, watching her lead her friends in synchronized jumping jacks, the speaker behind her still blasting like a nightclub. Then he walked back to his porch, sat down, and stared at the driveway. The sketchpad stayed closed. The bourbon stayed untouched. Again, that night, Marcus didn't sleep. Not because of the music. That had finally stopped around noon, though not before Cynthia's friend had double-parked across the sidewalk and left tire tracks on his lawn. No, it wasn't the noise, it was the message. Cynthia wasn't clueless. She was deliberate. This wasn't about parking anymore, or music, or boot camps. It was about power, about territory, and the unspoken rules she seemed to live by. What's yours is mine, and what's mine is sacred. The following Monday, Marcus got a letter. Folded neatly in a pristine envelope taped to his front door. He unfolded it slowly, already bracing for the nonsense. Community reminder. As neighbors, we should strive to create a harmonious environment for all. Let's be more generous with our driveways and space. We never know when a neighbor might need a helping hand. Cynthia Whitmore, HOA Outreach Committee. There was a heart drawn at the bottom, a literal heart. Marcus crushed it in one hand and dropped it in the trash. That evening, he called the HOA hotline. The receptionist sounded like she was half asleep. "Unless there's property damage or a safety issue, sir," she droned. "We don't usually mediate parking concerns. Have you tried talking to her?" "Yes," Marcus said, "multiple times." "Well, we can send a courtesy notice. That's about it." He hung up. He didn't want courtesy. He wanted respect. Later that week, Cynthia threw a midweek mixer on her lawn. More music, more folding tables, more parking in his space. This time Marcus didn't say a word. He simply parked on the street, walked into his house, and locked the door. He didn't yell, didn't leave a note, didn't even look out the window. He just sat at his kitchen table, opened his sketchbook, and started drawing. Not a landscape, not a portrait. A tow truck. A silver Lexus lifted off the ground, chains wrapped tight. Wheels spinning in the air. His pencil moved with the quiet fury of a man who had made a decision, because Marcus Lane had reached his limit. And Cynthia Whitmore? She was about to find out just how quiet revenge could be. Saturday evening. The kind of dusk that clings to summer, gold lights stretching over rooftops, breeze scented with charcoal and fresh-cut grass. Marcus Lane pulled onto his street with a box of groceries in the back seat and a rotisserie chicken sweating on the passenger floor mat. He was tired, not just physically, but mentally too. After grading 87 perspective sketches that looked like collapsing barns and melting faces, all he wanted was a hot shower, a cold drink, and silence. But the silence wasn't what he got. Cynthia's silver Lexus RX was back in his driveway. Again. Parked sideways this time, like she was daring him to react. Marcus pulled over to the curb and just sat there for a moment, hands gripping the wheel. The rotisserie chicken fogged up the window beside him. He stared at the car and made a decision. He stepped out, phone in hand, and took a slow, deliberate picture. Then he zoomed in on her license plate. Then he opened his notes app and typed 3 words, "She did it again." He didn't knock on her door, didn't call her name. He just walked back to his house, groceries still in the car, and dialed the number he'd saved 2 weeks earlier. Sunstate Towing. How can I help you? Yeah, Marcus said. This is Marcus Lane. I've got a car parked illegally in my driveway. Same address as last time. Lexus RX, silver, same one. There was a pause, then a chuckle. We're on our way. The tow truck arrived 19 minutes later. Fast, quiet, professional. The driver was a young guy with tattoos on his neck and Bluetooth in his ear. He took one look at Marcus and gave a respectful nod. Got proof of ownership? Marcus handed him a copy of his deed. Perfect, the driver said. Let's move some metal. The process was smooth. Hooks. Chains. The hydraulic lift groaned as Cynthia's SUV tilted skyward. Marcus stood on the porch with arms crossed, watching as her car was hauled away like a misbehaving child. He didn't smile. He just felt calm, like a line had finally been drawn. 30 minutes later, a storm arrived. Not clouds, Cynthia. She came pounding at his door like she was breaking in, not knocking. Marcus opened it slowly, expression unreadable. She was in house slippers and silk pajama pants, a phone clutched in one hand, her face flushed red from a combination of rage and Chardonnay. Where is my car? She hissed. Gone, Marcus said evenly. You did not call a tow truck. I absolutely did. You can't do that. He leaned against the doorframe, unbothered. Actually, I can. Private property. Repeated warnings. Local law agrees with me. I have connections, Marcus, she snapped. I'm on the HOA board. I can make your life very, very difficult. He gave her a slow blink. Good for you. Your car's at Sunshine Towing on Orange Blossom Trail. You'll need cash. Then he shut the door in her face. But Cynthia didn't leave. She stood on the porch for 10 full minutes, yelling. Threats, insults, wild accusations, something about property rights and community harmony, and how dare you embarrass me in front of everyone. And when that didn't work, she called the cops. The 2 officers showed up 15 minutes later. Marcus didn't flinch. He had his paperwork ready. Deed, photos, the HOA correspondence he'd printed that very morning. Everything is neat and stapled. One officer, a broad-shouldered man with kind eyes, skimmed the documents and looked back at Cynthia. Ma'am, this appears to be all in order. His driveway is private property. But he didn't even warn me this time. The officer raised an eyebrow. According to his file, you've received multiple requests to stop parking there, including one from the HOA. She turned redder. He's doing this to humiliate me. The cop looked at Marcus, then back at her. Sounds like he's just doing what he's legally allowed to do. Cynthia's mouth opened, but no words came out. Then she stormed off, shouting something about injustice and calling her lawyer. Marcus exhaled, but this wasn't over. The next morning, the flyers appeared, printed, laminated, taped to every mailbox on the block. Is this the community we want? Neighbors should communicate, not punish. Who will he call on you next time? No names. But everyone knew what it was about. And who had written them? Cynthia Whitmore didn't do subtle. Later that day, a neighbor named Dennis, a retired Marine who rarely spoke, walked up to Marcus while he was watering his roses. You towed it, huh? Marcus nodded. Dennis grinned. Good. She's been treating this street like a kingdom for years. About time someone reminded her we all pay taxes here. Marcus didn't say anything. He didn't need to. The neighborhood was watching now. That Thursday, Marcus received a formal warning from the HOA. Cynthia had filed a complaint, excessive aggression toward board members. The accusation? Creating an unsafe community atmosphere. Marcus stared at the letter for a long time. Then he turned it over and began sketching. This time, not a tow truck. A court gavel. Because if Cynthia wanted a war, he was done playing defense. It happened again. This time, on a Saturday. The one weekend Marcus's entire family was visiting from Atlanta. His mom, 2 sisters, and a handful of energetic nieces and nephews were already halfway down the highway when he stepped outside to set up the backyard grill. And there it was. Cynthia's Lexus, parked not just in his driveway, but blocking the garage, sideways like it owned the concrete. Marcus stood still for a long moment. The birds chirped. Somewhere a lawnmower hummed, and inside him a switch flipped. He turned back into the house, grabbed his phone, and dialed. Sunstate Towing. It's Lane again, he said. Same address, same car, same driveway. But this time, she blocked my garage. The dispatcher chuckled. She really doesn't learn, huh? We'll be there in 15. Marcus hung up, grabbed a pair of folding chairs from the garage she'd tried to block, and brought them out to the front lawn. Then he made himself a cold drink, set his shades on, and sat down like a man waiting for the show. 10 minutes later, the tow truck came rolling down the street. And so did Cynthia. She exploded out of her front door barefoot, holding a mimosa glass and wearing a white jumpsuit that didn't look cheap. Behind her, a small crowd had gathered, guests from whatever brunch party she was throwing. Some had drinks in hand. Others pulled out their phones. Everyone sensed something was about to go down. "What are you doing?" she screeched. The tow truck driver didn't even look at her. He was already backing into position, dropping the hook. Marcus remained in his chair, calm, drink in hand. Cynthia stormed up to him, finger wagging in the air. "You called the tow truck again? You parked in my driveway again," Marcus said without turning. "I told you I would have moved it. You knew I had guests. There's no street parking left." "Not my problem," she growled, lips trembling. "You're being petty, Marcus, vindictive, small." He sighed. "You've said you'd move it before, but you don't, so I did." The driver began raising her Lexus off the ground. That's when Cynthia turned to the crowd. "Are you all seeing this? He's attacking me. I'm being targeted." A couple of her guests exchanged awkward looks. One of them, an older woman in a denim jacket, muttered, "You parked in his garage, Cyn. Maybe chill." Cynthia spun around, stunned, as if betrayal had come from inside her own brunch circle. "I have connections," she screamed. "I can make things hard for you, Marcus." He stood up slowly and set his drink down. "Oh, Cynthia," he said with a low chuckle, "I don't think you realize what's happening here." He gestured toward the tow truck. "Your car is already gone." The Lexus was halfway down the street, hooked and strapped like a war trophy. Cynthia let out a scream so shrill it startled a nearby toddler. "You're going to regret this," she shrieked. Marcus looked her dead in the eye. "No, you are." Then he turned and walked back inside. Just as his family pulled up, their SUV honking, his nieces hanging out the window, waving at him. Cynthia stood frozen on the sidewalk, mimosa dripping from her fingers. That night, the HOA group chat exploded. Screenshots, photos, side conversations, gossip flying like wildfire. A neighbor posted a photo of the tow truck mid-lift. Another posted a clip of Cynthia yelling. Someone even made a meme. "When you park like royalty, but forget the king owns the castle." By Monday, the video had 14,000 views on TikTok. And Marcus? He didn't post a thing. He just taught his art classes, made dinner, and let the neighborhood watch her unravel. But Cynthia wasn't the type to go down quietly. That Thursday, Marcus received a surprise visit from a private security officer driving a white SUV with flashing lights. The man stepped out with a clipboard and a forced smile. "Mr. Lane, yeah? We received a report of suspicious behavior in the area, someone watering plants late at night." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "That's me. The sun's cooler after 9 p.m. The officer shifted awkwardly. "Well, just doing a routine check." Across the street, Cynthia stood on her porch sipping tea, eyes locked on them. Marcus looked at her. Then back at the officer. "You can tell her next time to just send an email." The officer gave him a knowing nod and drove off. Later that day, an anonymous complaint arrived in Marcus's mailbox. "Your front porch plants may be violating HOA guidelines on decorative overgrowth." He laughed out loud. The same ferns that had been there for 2 years were now a threat to neighborhood harmony. Cynthia was trying everything. Complaints, calls, sideways glances. But it was too late. People had seen her. They'd heard her. And now, they weren't buying it. The next HOA meeting was scheduled for the following week. Marcus, who never attended, marked the date with a bold red X, because he wasn't just bringing documents this time. He was bringing receipts. And Cynthia Whitmore? She was about to learn what happens when you pick a fight with the quiet neighbor who's finally had enough. The flyers came first, slick, full color, laminated like they were meant to last through a hurricane, taped to mailboxes, slipped under front doors, and even pinned to the bulletin board at the community clubhouse. When neighbors become bullies, who's really creating the drama on Oakwood Drive? Towing isn't kindness, it's control. He could be targeting you next. No name, no address. But everybody knew. Marcus Lane had become a headline in his own neighborhood. He didn't respond, didn't rip them down, didn't post a rebuttal in the HOA group chat, didn't knock on doors to explain his side. Because he didn't need to. Cynthia Whitmore was unraveling herself in real time, and the neighborhood was watching. And while she was busy playing the victim, Marcus was busy collecting facts. He had over 20 documented instances of her parking in his driveway. Photos, timestamps, a printed log, screenshots of her texts, the official warning from the towing company, even the audio recording of her yelling in front of the brunch crowd captured unintentionally by his niece filming TikToks. He wasn't going to war, he was preparing to win. But Cynthia wasn't done. She escalated. First came the HOA violations, all filed under anonymous complaints: overgrown ferns, paint chipping on the mailbox, unapproved lawn chairs, excessive watering during non-watering hours. Then came the suspicious behavior calls. Security drove by his house 4 times in 1 week, once when he was grilling, once when he was helping his niece fix her bike, once, no joke, when he was reading a book on his porch after 9 p.m. And then came the letter. Folded in a crisp white envelope, hand-delivered and sealed with the HOA logo. Marcus opened it at his kitchen table, fingers already tired of the nonsense. Subject: formal review hearing, resident Marcus Lane. Due to repeated community complaints regarding harassment, aggressive behavior, and actions that have caused division among neighbors, you are requested to appear at the next HOA board meeting for a formal review of your conduct. He read it twice. Then he laughed. Out loud. Because after months of passive aggression, flyers, false complaints, and parking violations, Cynthia was trying to put him on trial. And she thought the board, her board, would protect her. The meeting was held on a Wednesday evening inside the community center. Folding chairs, bright overhead lights, a dusty podium no one ever wanted to stand at until now. Marcus arrived 5 minutes early. He wore a navy blue button-down and carried a black leather folder under one arm. As he stepped in, the room turned. Some people nodded at him. Others looked away. Cynthia, already seated at the front, lips pressed tight, dressed like she was heading to court. Blazer, pearls, the whole production. She didn't look at him. She didn't have to. This was her show. Or so she thought. The meeting opened with the usual. Landscaping budgets, pool hours, complaints about garbage bins, and teenagers skateboarding near the tennis court. Then came the real show. Next, said Sharon Neely, board president, we'll be reviewing the matter of Mr. Mang Pork, Marcus Lane, and recent neighborhood concerns. Cynthia leaned forward, eyes glittering. Marcus stood, walked to the podium, opened the folder, and began. Good evening, he said, voice calm but clear. I've lived on Oakwood Drive for 6 years. I've paid every HOA fee on time. I've kept my property clean, followed the guidelines, and stayed out of people's business. He paused. But I've also been harassed, lied about, and deliberately antagonized by someone who believes rules don't apply to them. He held up a photo, Cynthia's Lexus in his driveway. Another, the car blocking his garage. Another, her brunch party, speaker blaring. This has happened more than 20 times. I have documentation, witness statements, and a log going back 3 months. He passed the folder to the board. There's no excuse for this behavior. There's no misunderstanding. There's only disrespect and escalation. He stepped back, didn't glare, didn't smile, just sat down. Cynthia stood so fast her chair scraped. This is absurd, she said, voice sharp. He's exaggerating. He's been retaliating for months. He's made me feel unsafe in my own community. Unsafe? Someone in the back murmured. I'm on the board, Cynthia continued. I've served this community for 10 years. I've hosted events, fundraisers. I've watched out for this neighborhood. And weaponized that power, Marcus said quietly. Cynthia spun toward him. Excuse me? You used your position to intimidate me. You filed fake complaints, called security, spread flyers, turned this community into your personal kingdom. The room went quiet. Even Sharon looked uncomfortable. One of the board members cleared his throat. Miss Whitmore, he said, we've reviewed the documents, and we've also received complaints about your actions from multiple residents. Cynthia froze. What? We've had reports about misuse of HOA authority, inappropriate behavior, and retaliatory tactics. That's ridiculous. Another board member spoke up. You filed 6 separate complaints about Mr. Lane's mailbox paint, one about his folding chairs, and a formal notice about hostile lawn watering. Laughter rippled through the room. Cynthia's jaw dropped. This isn't happening, she muttered. But it was. The board president cleared her throat. After review, the board has voted to remove Miss Cynthia Whitmore from her HOA position. effective immediately. Furthermore, we are instituting a new mediation policy to prevent this kind of abuse in the future. Gasps. A few claps. Someone in the back whispered, "About time." Cynthia stood there, shaking. No, you can't do this. I built this community. I know everyone. You're making a mistake." Sharon looked at her, expression steady. "We're choosing peace." Marcus stepped outside into the warm evening air. It smelled like honeysuckle and victory. Cynthia exited 10 minutes later, head down, heels clicking fast against the pavement. No one followed. No one called her name. The power that had once hovered around her like a perfume had evaporated. She passed Marcus without a word. And he didn't offer one either. Because some battles end not with shouting, but with silence. The quiet was strange at first. No music, no Lexus, no flyers taped to mailboxes. For the first time in months, Marcus Lane could step outside, sip his coffee, and breathe. He thought he'd feel victorious, but what he felt was peace. Cynthia Whitmore was gone. The for sale sign had come and gone, so had the moving truck. No farewell, no closure, just silence. The only trace she left behind was the pair of porcelain angels that still stood by her empty walkway, cracked, weather-faded, and leaning slightly to one side. Like her legacy. The house sat untouched for weeks, neighbors speculated. She's staying with her sister. Filed for early retirement. Left the HOA altogether. Marcus didn't care. For him, the war was over. But the lesson lingered. A month later, a young couple moved in. Teachers, just like Marcus. No brunch parties, no flyers, no entitlement, and no one parked in his driveway. The neighborhood changed, too. People waved more. Conversations on the sidewalk lasted longer. HOA meetings became less tense and more collaborative. And for the first time, folks started asking Marcus for his thoughts on community events, shared space, on fairness. Turns out, standing up for yourself sometimes makes others realize they need someone to do it first. But that wasn't the surprise. That came on a Tuesday. Marcus returned from work to find an envelope on his porch. No stamp, no name, just a cream-colored envelope sealed with a thin red ribbon. He opened it slowly, cautiously. Inside was a single handwritten note. "I never learned how to say sorry without sounding like I was still trying to win. So this is me trying to let go. Thank you for making me face myself." She read it 3 times. The handwriting was unmistakable. It wasn't an apology. Not really. Not yet. But it was something. It was a crack in the armor. And sometimes, cracks are how the light gets in. He folded the note gently, set it inside his sketchbook, and picked up a pencil. This time, he didn't draw a Lexus, didn't draw a tow truck, didn't draw a courtroom or a confrontation. He drew a front porch, 2 chairs, and nobody sitting in them. Just peace. You never really know someone until you say no to them. That's when the mask drops. That's when entitlement shows up, or respect. That's when people reveal if they see you as an equal or as someone they thought they could walk over. Marcus said no, and the world didn't fall apart. It got quieter, better. And sometimes the real victory isn't in what you win, it's in what you never have to fight for again.